Hey, today I'm going to show you how to use a food scale. Most food scales have 2 or 3 buttons. Today I'm using a scale that only has 2. When you look at the food scale, you will see Hey, I'm going to show you how to use a food scale. Most food scales have 2 or 3 buttons. Mine has 2. So when you look at the food scale, you will see an on and off button. You will see a ZT button. The ZT button is to clear out the scale back to 0. And you will also see a unit button. The units are in grams, milligrams, fluid ounces, and pounds and ounces. When tracking food, it's very important that you are as accurate as possible so that the data is as accurate as possible. I want to talk about measuring cups. It's very important that when tracking food that you don't use measuring cups as a form of tracking. And the reason being is because we don't want to measure by volume, we want to measure by weight. So when you are tracking your food, I highly recommend only measuring in grams and in pound ounces to be as accurate as you can be. And the reason why I say that about the measuring cups is because right here I have an example. We're gonna go ahead and put a little container on our food scale. I'm going to press the ZT button to clear it out. Right here I have organic protein. This is the only thing I had in stock. I ran out of oats. But when I look at the nutrition facts, it shows here that 2 scoops equals about 51 grams. Now I'm gonna go ahead and use the scoops to measure out. And this is just an example, and like when it comes to protein, it's usually spot on. I didn't have oatmeal, which is a really great example, but right here I have a scoop. Remember, it says that 2 scoops equals 51 grams. So there you go. And when I look at my scale, it shows right here this 2 scoops was 52 grams. Now, of course, because this is a powder, it is very dense, so it tends to be very accurate. But when you're talking about measuring oatmeal, half a cup of oatmeal should be about 40 grams. But when you use a measuring cup, a half cup to measure oatmeal, what you will notice is that half a cup tends to be a little bit more than 40 grams. And the thing is, when you start to add up all those calories and you inaccurately track your food, those hidden calories can add up and it can throw off all the data. That is why it's very important that you measure using grams or pound and ounces, okay? Not fluid ounces. Now, when it comes to you measuring liquids, I highly recommend that you measure in grams. The reason being is because once again, we don't want to measure by volume, we want to measure by weight. Now, when tracking food, if you are the type of person that likes to meal prep ahead of time, I recommend that you weigh your protein raw. A lot of people do it cooked and some people do it raw. I would recommend that you do it raw because what people have found is that it's a little bit easier. Now, when you are measuring your food raw, I'll give you an example. We are going to be measuring ground beef. So let's say that you weigh your ground beef and it comes to be 800 grams. You're gonna go ahead and cook your ground beef. Once it's cooked, you're going to drain the liquid that coming from the ground beef, and you're going to measure the ground beef again cooked. And let's say, and in this example, after you drain your beef and you have cooked it, it ends up being about 700 grams. So it was 800 grams raw, now it's 700 grams cooked. What you're gonna do is you're gonna do a little bit of math here, but nothing complicated. You're gonna go ahead and divide 800 grams divided by 700 grams, which will equal to 1.4. And you want to keep that number in mind when you are eating your food. So let's say that the next day comes by and you are trying to measure out your food. And let's say that you measure out 500 grams. Okay? You measure out 500 grams. Then you're going to multiply whatever portion you measured out in grams. So for example, 500 grams, you multiply it by 1.4, and whatever number is the result of you multiplying the 500 times the 1.4 is what you're going to be tracking on your app. Does that make sense? I hope it does. It is much easier once you are actually doing it than me telling you to do it. Okay? Now, another thing that I want you to keep in mind is only measure the food that you are actually eating. And what I mean by that is, for example, let's say that we have an apple. When tracking your food, you don't want to track the whole apple, because of course you're not going to be eating the core. Some people do, but most people don't. So what you want to do is you want to cut your apple. How many other pieces you're actually going to eat that? Track that instead of tracking the whole apple whole. That is going to be giving you the most accurate reading possible, so that the data is as accurate as can be. Remember, we are tracking in order to find out how many calories you are eating, how many calories you should be eating, and how we can implement portion control into our lifestyle, but seeing how much of something actually is in terms of calories. So I hope that this makes sense. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.